So, can we talk a little bit about why organ donation matters so much? It's something that many people support, and we hear about it like when we get our driver's license. What do you think is important to understand about organ donation?
So, right now, there are more than 100,000 people on the waiting list waiting for a life saving organ. There's 1,900 people across the state right now that are waiting for a life saving organ, and one person can save up to 8 lives, and through tissue donation, more than 75. You may buy somebody another year, you may get somebody to have their dad walk them down the aisle. You just never know what kind of impact you might have.
Yeah, it doesn't just stay with that patient. It goes to their family members, more time together, more time with children or their spouse or friends and family, more time to accomplish things that they maybe wanted to accomplish here on earth. Welcome to Pulse Check, the official podcast of Carolina Pines Regional Medical Center. My name is Rachel Courtney, and I'm the Director of Education here at Carolina Pines. Today, we are talking about something incredibly meaningful, the gift of life. And I have joining me Madison Kemplin with Sharing Hope, South Carolina. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So just to get things going and started, I'm going to ask you, what exactly is We Are Sharing Hope, South Carolina?
We Are Sharing Hope is a organ procurement organization. There are 55 of them across the country, and we provide services for organ donation, for organ, eye, and tissue, and we provide education to the community.
So your organization is pretty much responsible for serving and educating our community about the gift of life through organ donation. So that's great. And Sharing Hope is our specific one for South Carolina. So can we talk a little bit about why organ donation matters so much? It's something that many people support, and we hear about it like when we get our driver's license. But why is it so important, and what do you think is important to understand about organ donation?
So right now, there are more than 100,000 people on the waiting list waiting for a life-saving organ. There's 1,900 people across the state right now that are waiting for a life-saving organ, and every 19 minutes, somebody is added to the waiting list. And one person can save up to 8 lives, and through tissue donation, more than 75.
It's one of the most generous decisions someone can make. And funny enough, I was asked to do this podcast because it's so meaningful to me. It's something that I had always heard about, but never, oh yes, I'm an organ donor on my driver's license, but why is that important to me? And then I have a beautiful 2-year-old little boy named Lucas who has a congenital heart defect. With organ donation, I knew about it when we got his diagnosis. It was always a factor there. But until you're physically in those rooms watching your child go through open heart surgery 3 times, you get to know the people on the floor. And I never had an appreciation for organ donation until I physically saw those kids who are 8, 9, any age. When we were there were a couple who were 8 or 9, and they were all the best of friends. And you see them every day. They come by, they say hey to you, they say hey to your little boy, and you know that they're waiting on a life-saving organ, and they can't leave that hospital room until they get what they need, or until ultimately something they may not ever get what they need. And so just seeing that and seeing how happy and they just lived each day like it was, just another day. And that's why it's so important to me, is seeing that and seeing what the struggles that they go through, missing out on the importance of being a kid. And of course, for me, it's all kid related, but adults too. We have a lot of patients who need kidneys. Kidneys is one of our biggest ones in this area, like we talked about. Yes. And they're on dialysis, and they're having to do those treatments several days a week, taking time away from their family. And so just that gift that someone can give is just so important to me, because it gives someone else that gift of life back.
Absolutely.
So that's why it's important to me for that reason. Let's talk a little bit about how that process works. So walk us through what happens when someone becomes a donor. Like, what does that process look like for them?
So it starts with the hospital staff. So once a patient meets clinical triggers, The nurse or physician, whoever is at the bedside with the patient, they give us a referral by calling us, and then we go through a process with our medical director and we screen those patients. And just see what suitability they have. And then we go through a process and follow from behind. And if they meet a certain criteria called brain death, or if the patient, the family wants to withdraw care, then we provide this as a end of life option to that family.
And so when one of those families makes that decision, we here at Carolina Pines and across the state do something called an honor walk for that family. Is that correct?
Yes.
So our staff will line the hallways and honor that decision that family or that patient has made to do that life-giving decision, which is awesome. Obviously, these conversations are emotional ones with family. They're in a very difficult time in their lives, and making these decisions is hard. So how does We Are Sharing Hope South Carolina support families during that difficult time?
Absolutely. So we lead with empathy. We have a family support coordinator that is specialized with speaking with families, and they approach the families and go through any sort of questions that they may have, and go through the organ donation process and what that looks like. And we follow the family through the entire procedure. And then afterwards, we have an aftercare team that follows up with the family, and they are with the family for every milestone, starting at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and beyond. And then we honor those families through different memory events. We honor the donors through those, and we have different events across the state that we try and do it at each hospital just to keep that family member alive for them.
That's awesome. Yes, I've seen some, especially being in the heart community with my son, where you could purchase like ribbons for your mailbox or your tree that money goes towards research and things like that, but it also shows that support for that family. So that is an awesome thing to do. So working this position has its hard days and it has its really great days. What would be the most rewarding thing that you see in your job?
So, just recently I had a case, and we followed the family through the whole from start to finish to the OR, and just seeing this family walk through that, it's such a tender-hearted moment, and it's precious time that they spend these last few minutes with their loved one. And so walking to the OR and giving them closure. But also, this is not the end of this patient's story. This is a new beginning for someone else too. And so they can always look back and see that their loved one provided life to someone else when they medically could not.
Yeah, and I always see all these wonderful videos of getting to meet the donors and stuff like that. Obviously, that's an option for those, the family and the one who receives that organ, to be able to meet up afterwards. But how rewarding that would be to be able to hear, your child's heartbeat again in someone else's chest,
Absolutely.
So that's just an amazing part of the story. And not only bridging that gap for the family who's lost that person, but that their loved one has a purpose and a meaning going forward, even though they're not on this side on earth.
And those honor walks, we'll play music for the family. If that patient, if they had a favorite song that they love to listen to, we'll play that down to the OR. And even in the OR. Some families will have a whole playlist and we will play it for them.
Yeah.
And then we also do a moment of silence before we go to the OR. And then that way, staff that is going to be in the OR and the staff that are lined up in the hallways, they get a picture of who this person was.
Right.
And so beyond that, it's a beautiful moment.
Right.
And it's to recognize that this person was a human and they had memories, and these memories are going to keep going because we are providing this life-saving organ for somebody else, and it's not the end of their story.
Their legacy continues.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have a family that decides, or a patient that decides they want to be an organ donor, the list is very large with people who need those organ donations. And when they choose to do that process, Can we talk a little bit about how they have to be certain criteria for matching and things like that? So why the list is still so large, even though we have people who are willing to donate?
Right. So it kind of depends on when the patient comes into the hospital, and what brought them there. Is it something that happened traumatic? Is this a chronic issue where some of their organs may have been damaged over time? So it has to be the perfect setting to really maximize that gift.
Right.
And then each person is different every single time. And so, like I said, with our medical director, we screen every single patient and then we see, okay, so what is suitable? And we look at that, and then we look at time constraints for the family. And we try and make things happen in a very timely manner so that this is closure for that family. And so once that happens, we look to see what we can allocate, and then we go down the list, and everything. There's rules upon rules about going down the list.
Yep.
And so they start with the heart, if the heart is suitable enough to donate, and then they go to the lungs and then go to the rest.
Right.
And so that's kind of how it goes.
And so those organs, if you have someone, let's say with a heart that is perfect for donation, it still has to match, let's say, the recipient's blood, be very similar in blood type and things like that.
Yes.
Because if the blood type, or I'm sure there's a huge list of algorithms that they go through. When you donate that organ, it has to be so close to that person's natural makeup so that their body accepts it. Because the ability for rejection can be high if it's not a very close match for them.
Yes.
So that would make it difficult you have to kind of wait for the right one, the one that fits you the best.
Right.
So just because someone is willing to donate and you're first on the list might not mean that you get matched, because it's not the best match for you.
And just as an example, adult heart would not be suitable for a child's heart.
Yes.
So size does matter, and just criteria matters, and what brought them there really does matter.
Yeah, so I know we talked a lot about, your main organs, heart, lung, liver, those things like that. But I think it's also important for people to understand that, when you talk about that it can save up to 75 people with one donation, that we're not only talking about those major organs, but we're talking about eyes, skin, things like that. So if we have patients who are have lost vision, that we can restore sight, who have been in incidences where they've been burned or something like that. So that tissue can bring them back to where they were at before that. So I think it's important that we let our viewers know that it goes beyond those major things, that it's the small things too. You've lost sight in one eye, but you can still see through the other. But it does make such an impact to that person. And so that being able to give the gift of sight back, or some normalcy back to someone, is important as well.
Absolutely.
So there are some myths and facts with Sharing Hope, or with organ donation in general. So what are some common myths that you hear people reference when they talk about organ donation?
Yeah, so one big myth is when a patient comes in, there is something out there that the physician is not going to save them because they're a registered donor, and that's absolutely not true at all. The hospital, their only job is to save that patient, and we only come into the picture once that patient meets criteria. And if they get better, we never approach the family. And if they do not get better, again, it's just an end-of-life option that somebody can choose.
Gotcha. So they have to meet certain criteria. And of course, we would do everything in our power to save that person. And if they get better, they get better. That's awesome. So if one of our viewers wants to become a registered donor, what does that look like? How would they go about doing that?
Yes, so you can visit donatelifesc.org, and then you can also say yes on your driver's license, either by renewing it or getting a driver's license. And then you can also register through your iPhone. There is an app through there that you can add that in there.
So we are extremely proud of our partnership with We Are Sharing Hope South Carolina here at Carolina Pines. So why is collaborating with local hospitals so important to this process?
Yes, so our hospital partnerships are super important. We want to be engaged with the staff. We want great relationships with all of the C-suite, and we want to have a very clean process of how everything goes. And we want that referral to happen, especially if a patient is a registered donor. We want to honor what they want. And we, again, just want that end of life option offered because of so many people waiting on the waiting list.
Yes, it's a big number. So our hospital staffers are really the front line for identifying those patients and getting that information to you guys. And so that's really why the relationship is so important. They're that first line of notification so that you guys can follow along. So do you think that there are any more misconceptions that people have about organ donation that would cause them to say no in those situations?
Yes, so of course, some people have some religious beliefs that they want everything still in their body, so they are going to say no to organ donation, and that's their right. There's also some misconceptions about just if you're going to come into the hospital that they're not going to save you because you're an organ donor, when in fact the hospital staff's number one job is to save your life, and we want to keep it at that.
Right.
We also find that some people see stuff on TV and have their own views about things with organ donation. They think that, we are fighting over different things and fighting to get someone's organ, and that's completely incorrect.
You have to meet certain criteria, especially and patients in South Carolina I'm pretty sure our legislature, and correct me if I'm wrong, says that a patient has to be considered what we call brain dead. So that means that if we were to take all life-saving equipment off of them, that they would not live after that. But if we would keep those life-saving equipment on, they would. So that pretty much means that their brain is not telling their body what to do. So they have to meet certain criteria versus what sometimes those reality TV shows, or those not really reality TV shows, but those TV shows show us. And then, physicians obviously don't get the right to fight over an organ like you see there. So they have to meet certain criteria for those family members that they go to.
Yes.
So we have to follow all the rules and guidelines. And of course, our major and important thing that we do first is trying to save that patient.
Absolutely.
So I think closing with this, my last question would be, why do you think it's so important that you would become an organ donor? What kind of impact would that make for you?
Yeah, so one person can save up to, like I said, 8 people's lives.
Yes.
And enhance more than 75 lives through tissue donation. And so you are never going to know the extent of how much you could possibly save so many lives through organ and tissue and eye donation. And so you may buy somebody another year, you may, get somebody to have their dad walk them down the aisle.
Right.
And so you just never know what kind of impact you might have just by being a donor.
Yeah, it doesn't just stay with that patient. It goes to their family members, more time together, more time with children or their spouse or friends and family, more time to accomplish things that they maybe wanted to accomplish here on earth. And so that gives them that opportunity to do the things and fulfill their dreams that they have on earth. So before we wrap up, is there any kind of message that you would like to leave with our listeners today?
You can change the lives of up to 8 people just by registering to be a donor. And there are so many people out there that are waiting for a life-saving organ. It is a selfless act, one of the most selfless acts a human can possibly do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing what you do every day with your work and your team, and how we work together as a collaboration here at Carolina Pines. And so thank you guys for joining us on the Pulse Check.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Pulse Check. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and share it with someone who might find it helpful. Your support helps this podcast reach more people in our community. Pulse Check is a production of Carolina Pines Regional Medical Center. Special thanks to our producers Hannah Cadell and Anna Tingen. Audio, video, and editing services by Seth and Grayson Johnson at Lockwood Studios. All content is for educational purposes only. We do not intend for the content to be a substitute for professional medical advice, counseling, diagnosis, or treatment. Our content doesn't engage visitors into a professional relationship. We'll see you on the next episode of Pulse Check.